How do we get our kids to eat better and in a more diverse way? Like right now, my kids, all they want, right, is the typical, like the buttered noodles. They want the mac and cheese or what, like chicken nuggets. How do we get them to eat better? And eat more sometimes.
I'm extremely passionate about parenting. I love my kids to death. Don't play a parenting expert online or the internet. It is very tough with kids. I will say though, as I'm sure you know, and perhaps we'll get more into it later, but kids don't do what you say, they do what you do, right? Yeah. And that is one of the most, challenging and wonderful things about parents, right? Like you could say you want them to do something. You could be like, have more patience, but as you're saying have more patience, you're not showing patience, right? If you want them to eat a certain way, eat the way you want them to eat.
Yeah.
If you want them to behave a certain way, behave that way, right? It's like some parents complain about screen time, yet they're on their phone all day.
All day, yeah.
Right? So I think the best thing you can do is set the example, right? Do what you want them to do. Put those foods in front of them. Be willing to, waste. Like, unfortunately, as you know, your kids could love one thing one week. You buy a ton of it, and then the next week they're off it, right? They don't want it. That's gross, right? So you have to be willing to experiment. You have to be willing to, put different foods in front of them and try it.
How do you allow substitutions for your kids especially when they're younger? How old are they now?
9 and 6.
Okay, well, so yeah, they're still young. Do you still do you offer substitutions? For example, you guys are having something like that they're just not going to want, quinoa salad, let's say, and the kid's like, I don't want a quinoa salad. Do you be like, okay, well, I'll make you chicken nuggets tonight, or are you you eat what we ate?
It's more, it's more whatever in a way, it's whatever you like that we think is healthy to an extent, because listen, having hungry kids does not help with behavior, right? So like we need them to eat, we want them to eat.
Yep.
So there is that fine line, that balance. It is tricky.
Yeah.
But I will say, exposing them to a lot of foods, we try not to make treats such a big deal, because the old if you finish your plate then you can have dessert.
Yep.
Then dessert becomes this forbidden fruit. It becomes this special thing. It's like, it's just a cookie, right? Yeah. It's just a ice cream, whatever it might be. It's not that big a deal. So we really try for that, and that seems to have helped. But again, it's a work in progress.
Yeah. Have you read the book French Kids Eat Everything? Heard of that one?
I've heard of it. Yes.
Yeah, that was a fascinating one. I really liked it, and the idea behind that book. It's worth for parents who are struggling out there getting their kids to eat. It will definitely help me. But the idea is that food, like with our kids, we treat food as if it's not that important. We're just like, here, eat some food, right? But the French treat food like it's the most important thing in the world. And so like learning to like food takes a long time. Expanding your palate takes years, and they have training in it, and they have it's a part of the school curriculum, right? As trying new foods and experimenting, but also talking through it. Like we teach our kids how to do the Pythagorean theorem or whatever, right? Like that's such an important thing in America, is like know this math thing, but then eat this crap food for lunch. That's not important. Like we don't. And I think the French have that right, at least in that regard of like food is the most important thing, or at least top 2 or 3 in life, because it guides everything else. So why do we leave it as a leftover?
It impacts every aspect of your life for sure. I think the one thing I think about a lot is. A lot of parents come to us, they have, they want to lose weight, they want to set the example for their kids. And again, how you are is the best model for your kids, right? You can say you want them to be a certain way, but how you are yourself is the best thing you can possibly do for them. If you want them to be healthy yourself, right? If you want them to eat healthy yourself. If you want them to exercise, etc. The one thing I find is that, I would encourage any parent out there or future parent to keep this in mind. Like, one thing you should never do is never talk negatively about yourself in front of your kid in terms of your body image, because they start to internalize that, oh, maybe I shouldn't like my body. And definitely never talk about, how you talk about yourself in front of your kid is so important. And so many kids and now adults grew up with parents that were constantly like, oh, I hate how I look, I'm not happy. And again, that becomes their normal, right? So try to be happy with yourself so your kid sees you happy. When you're not, that really impacts your kid, right? And, talking about your child's weight or things like that, you want to try to stay away from that, because, again, I hear it from parents all day long, and who were once kids who were still overcoming their parents' comments, right? And they were certainly well-intended, but they could have a lifetime impact.
Dude, I don't think I've ever heard anybody actually say that or verbalize it that way, but that's so true. Is like, if I'm around my kids talking about myself in a negative way, like, oh, look at this fat here, or whatever, whatever the thing is, they learn that that's a normal thing to do, is to criticize yourself and to look down upon yourself and to have that negative self-talk. I don't know why that's not talked about more, but man, that's powerful stuff.
Thanks. I mean, so we're a big basketball family, right? I love basketball. I'm coaching my kids basketball. And like, I even noticed this, like when we're shooting around outside, if I miss a few shots, I'm like, oh, I suck. And it's like, I don't want my kid to hear that.
Yeah.
And like, I really paid attention. Like, I don't say it anymore. It's like, oh man, I got to work on my form, or I got to adjust my like aim, or whatever it is. But I suck. Like, I don't want him to like have that negative self-talk.
Yeah.
So just pay attention to that. How you talk about yourself in front of your kids is super impactful.
I remember my son when he was 3 years old. He still struggles with talking clearly. Like, he's got kind of a struggle with a lot of the letters, right? So, but I remember he was trying to say something to me, and I was like, wait, say that again. And he was trying again, and I was like, buddy, try again. I'm not sure what you're trying. And he goes, oh, I'm no good at talking. And I was like, oh, geez. It started at 3. He's already like down on himself, saying, I'm no good at talking. And it like broke my heart, because I'm like, no, buddy, you're doing fine. Like, you're 3. Like, that's totally normal. Like, we're working on these letters. And man, it just, teaching our kids to have a better language around themselves, so important.
And it all starts with how we talk
about
ourselves in front of them. I mean, just, and of course, like the way you talk to him, you'd be like, no, of course not. You're still learning. You're a work in progress. But then when it's ourselves and we're alone, we're like, oh, I suck, etc. So we really have to be careful with that.